and is my first business. It's my first experience in the world of entrepreneurship. So there were a lot of learning lessons that came out of it. The first one is definitely constantly rerouting, pivoting, shifting your strategy, which is a natural and I think necessary learning lesson for, I think, almost all entrepreneurs. It gets easier with time, but meditation actually helped me enormously because in my experience, you kind of have to let go of set expectations and strategies that you're really holding on to, whether it's, your road to market, whether it's an actual product that you have to kind of change, or it's a funding strategy, or it's things that you anticipated or projected. And usually it really doesn't happen in the way that you initially, anticipate it to happen. So especially as you're forming your business, you're in a constantly, changing bubble that's slowly taking shape. And very often it ends up taking a totally different form than you had initially envisioned. And for me personally, it was things like finding the right manufacturer. We didn't have our own facility to make our chocolate bars, so we had to be able to find a partner that aligned with us that would be able to make our chocolate bars for us, and who was willing to partner up with us. And in the chocolate industry, it's kind of difficult, especially in this niche specialty part of the industry, because that's mostly competitors. We don't really have facilities and production facilities that exist solely to be co-manufacturers, like in the beverage industry or in other industries that have co-manufacturing options. So for me, it was really emailing all of the business owners that I had previously met when I was working when I was working prior to starting to launching Zora, and asking them if they had excess capacity and if they would be willing to support us in producing our chocolate bars. And so finding the right manufacturer was really difficult because of that reason. And it took us about 5 months. And we didn't even find the manufacturer on the onset of having conversations. So we had about 3 manufacturers that we had, almost close to negotiating conversations with, where we were putting up contracts and all of that. And then it just fell through last minute. So that was difficult. It was definitely something that I would consider as somewhat failures, small mini failures. And that was definitely something that allowed me to be a lot more comfortable with shifting, rerouting, and being a little bit more solution oriented as soon as something fell through. And then also funding sources. I mean, I know that this happens all the time, but at least in my experience, we had funding, or at least we thought we had funding, and then it ended up falling through right before we had started our project. So shifting and rerouting and being creative, and I started crowdfunding campaigns. I got a full-time job. I bootstrapped. I'm extremely grateful for having gone through these steps, because it definitely taught me a lot, but it also, again, taught me, the fact that you can't hold on to set expectations, because you're constantly going to have to, think on your feet. And then the third one, which is the most recent one, was our go-to-market channel. So we, or at least I was working on Zora when COVID first hit. And this was absolutely great for D2C brands because everyone was home, everyone was ordering online, e-commerce skyrocketed. And we actually launched when that started declining. And so our initial go-to market channel was D2C. It was consumers, who wanted to order luxurious, good quality chocolate with an impact. But we ended up having to totally reroute to retail and to other different business channels like corporate gifting and events, because that just totally fell through. And then the second learning lesson, which I think that we hear very often now, because mindfulness and wellness is definitely a trend nowadays, but working on yourself is as important as working on your business. I think this is something that many individuals who work hard or long hours realize. It's not necessarily targeted towards entrepreneurs. I think as entrepreneurs, we tend to want to get ahead. And so, we're wearing many hats. We're living and breathing our startup, and it actually gets difficult to kind of say stop. I'm going to take a moment to go, to the gym. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go to that party. For me, when I don't do that, things tend to get toxic, to be honest. I've noticed that ever since I've stopped, for instance, taking meetings past 6 p.m., or tend to set more realistic goals for myself, I know that in the long run, it'll be more beneficial to myself as a leader, as a business owner, and to my business. I noticed when I was kind of pushing myself as hard as I could, I started to be, less just something that seems silly, but I was less friendly, and I was a lot more stressed. And you could even tell in the way that I wrote and composed my emails, or just, when I would get on calls and talk to people, because I was just on edge all the time. And that affects things immensely. And so I definitely take time for myself now to take care of myself. And I think that actually shows in the way that I'm doing, as an entrepreneur. So I would also say that self-confidence has a huge role to play also in taking care of oneself. Entrepreneurship, in my experience, can take a toll on your self-confidence when you face rejections and pitfalls and failures. Whether it's, when you're dealing with funding and raising a round, or if you have an actual product and you're looking for retail partners, or just through your sales strategy, cold calling, cold emailing, if your network is somewhat limited. So as cliche as it sounds, you absolutely have to believe in your product and disassociate yourself from it in a way. The partners, the retailers, the customers who will resonate with your product or service, the investors who will believe in, what you're offering. When you find the right ones, it will happen seamlessly. And so with time, you get better at finding your tribe, finding your people, finding your customers, finding the right partners, filtering things out better so you know who to approach and who not to. But I think in the beginning, you get a lot of quote unquote rejections, or people not answering, or just or things that will make you kind of seem will play a huge impact in your self-confidence. And so at least for me, it was definitely the case. I didn't realize it up until a bit later, which then allowed me to, do a little bit of work on myself. And once I think you become a little bit more conscious of it, it's kind of easier to manage. And you do realize that, you're doing this for a reason. You're waking up every day to work on your business. You're kept up at night sometimes thinking about how to, improve things. And so if you're taking those steps, then you believe in what you're doing. And if you believe in what you're doing, then your confidence can shift dramatically. And just kind of, it seems so simple, but really remembering that on a daily basis is huge, or at least it was for me. And then also in terms of, working on yourself, I would say you get really uncomfortable as an entrepreneur, or at least I did. You have to find comfort in the unknown. And it's kind of like you're moving forward blindly. For me, it was, different things, but I didn't have much experience with negotiating, for example. And getting, in rooms, and I didn't know how to approach the negotiation. In the beginning, there were just so many elements to the conversation of negotiation that I just completely was, uncomfortable with and did not know about. I didn't know what to do, how to do it. Side note, there is a book that helped me enormously that I recommend. It's called Negotiating the Non-Negotiable by Daniel Shapiro. and it's a life-changing book. It makes you approach negotiating in all aspects of your life differently, in your personal, private, and your business, and the business side of things. So, but things like negotiating, things like public speaking, were really difficult for me, and they were spaces that I wasn't familiar with at all. Even the retail space, and even, different channels within our business, and within, the growth of Zora and starting it. So it is unknown, and you are uncomfortable, but finding some way to be comfortable with being uncomfortable basically helps enormously, because it takes weight off of your shoulders. And you kind of realize that you learn as you go, and there is so much beauty in that, and being open to it, you actually get a lot more out of it. And I think the third learning lesson would be that the people that you meet along the way are key in your journey. And I've heard that so many times before, but I really didn't understand it until I actually lived it. And the example that I have about that is that I actually formed an advisory board. I'm a solo entrepreneur, solo founder. So it was really me, myself, and I really felt like I needed some guidance. And so at first I kind of started asking everyone that I came across, friends, family, people I met on LinkedIn who were willing to get on calls with me, ex colleagues and employers. And so everyone has an opinion. Everyone has, their own way of looking at it. And if they're not really invested, I think bad advice, if you're not really if you're just sucking up everything that everyone is telling you, can actually be really damaging. And so for me, setting up an advisory board of 3 members who were willing to give me their valuable time, who were invested, who believed in me and my business and the impact that Zora could have, who were willing to give me their expertise, who were, spoke to me at length about their failures and their successes, who opened up their network sparingly, was huge, because it was 3 members who knew me and now know me so well that, I consider them as family members, and who were willing to be able to hold me accountable. As a solo entrepreneur, I really didn't have the ability to have someone that was, at my shoulder sometimes, making sure that I was getting the things done that I said that I would. And so with them, after every advisory board meeting, it was action items that we would set that in the next advisory board meeting, I had to have something to show for. So holding me accountable and providing, a lot of opportunities that came my way and really invested themselves in the business was key. So relationships do take time to develop, and prioritizing building certain relationships, and for me it was with these 3 members, can be extremely helpful for you and your business.